In the room and those of you who are online, I dare say that many of you would not recognize me, and that is because normally when I participate in these meetings, I am wearing a suit. But I heard a piece on the radio a couple of days ago, and they talked about the fact that Washington is so much a button-down town, so much blue suit, gray suit town. I decided to promote sartorial diversity this morning. And for those of you who are listening in, I am just wearing a sport coat. My name is Bob Clark. I am the communications chair, and let me not block our panelists. I am the communications chair for the ACT-IAC, Evolving the Workforce Community of Interest, and we invite you, or we welcome you to our June meeting. Today's topic will be diversity and inclusion, and we have a wonderful panel, and I just want to give a few administrative remarks before we get into that. One thing for the industry members, and we invite those of you who have not, on the government side, who have not joined the Evolving the Workforce Community of Interest. We have these meetings throughout the year addressing various human capital related topics. Membership for government is free, and all it will be for you is invitations to our monthly meeting. If you're interested, you can attend either in person. We usually have them here. I often have them at the GSA building, and others, last month we had it at the SEC building, but they're always in the Washington area. And if you're interested in getting on our mailing list, please speak to Rob Wright. Rob is, among other things, our photographer this morning, and Rob will get you on the mailing list and you'll get our monthly invitations. And this morning is particularly interesting. This turns out to be our single highest registered for event that we've had. We had, as of yesterday, 66 registrants, and it looks like we have about 30 in the room this morning, and there's an equal number online. We make a big effort to promote our activities because we know government is around the country, around the world. So there are a lot of participants online. And I will ask as a favor, for those of you who are online, if you have not already done so,
now it's already started.
We'd like to keep track of how many people, so we know how many lines we need to keep open. So if you would do us a favor and send an email just saying, I'm attending the EWF COI session online, and send that to rwright@ACT-IAC.org. You'll be sending a note to Rob Wright, and Rob just keeps track, and we'll know if we had 20 people or 30 or 200. So that was announcement one. Also for the online folks, please keep your phones on mute. We will be getting to a question session at the end, and at the end we will have a separate section where we ask for online, but it's very helpful if you keep your phones on mute. For industry members, we have several positions, leadership positions. I am the communications chair, so you will tend to see emails from me from time to time. But one of the positions, the one position that we have open right now is the industry vice chair position. And there's an election for that. We have one candidate declared for that. That's a self-nomination. If you are interested in, actually, are nominations still open or are nominations closed?
We're still open.
If you are interested in that position, send an email to WRIGHT@ACTIAC.org.
It's in the brochure.
And
Get famous.
again, and just say, I'm interested in the industry vice chair position, and Rob will get back with you and let you know what's involved with that. For members like myself who are not running for anything, there is the actual online election that starts the week of the 13th. You should have gotten individually emailed the instructions for participating. If you are an industry member and did not get an invitation, please send it to Rob Wright at the previously referenced address. And Rob will send you the email with the instructions. But that election I'm asking again, for the people who are online, please put us on mute. Just heard loud noise, and it'd be helpful if everybody's on mute. Thank you. So the last topic I have is we do have these meetings every second Thursday of the month, always at 10 o'clock. But we are off the next 2 months. So we do not have a July meeting. We do not have an August meeting. The next meeting will be September the 8th, and it's likely to be on the coming transition, the coming administration transition, and what, particularly from an HR role, what will be the impact on the HR teams going into the transition. No guarantees, that's our topic, not absolutely settled, but please save the date, September 8th. And this morning we sent out to everyone 3 handouts, one of which is a summary with bios, that's this document, one of which is questions and references for this topic, and the last of which, this group did a white paper on diversity and inclusion in 2011. And I just put the title page and on the back the table of contents so you can see what's in it. The actual document is about 30 pages long, so I didn't want to print that for everyone. But everyone who was registered for this session got a copy of the full document, and anyone who's not registered for this session but is interested in the document, you can go to the ACT-IAC website and pull it down, or you can send it again to rwright@actiac.org, and Rob will send it to you. That's my comments.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right, here's one person on the phone. Wow, how's everybody?
Good morning.
All right. So welcome, everyone. It is good to hear that this is a popular subject, because that just really reinforces the number of emails that I get every single day that I can't always get to. So that is really good to know that this is also, it's not just my email that's a reflection of how popular this topic is. So again, you heard my name is Sharon Wallwright. Currently, I am the acting director of the House of Diversity and Inclusion at OPM, and I've been active for quite a while. So any day now, we will be announcing our new director that will be coming on board. She mentioned that Veronica Villalobos, who had been our long-standing director, since the office was stood up, and then Veronica moved on to another position in OPM, so she is still around for her wise counsel. Just personally, I have been at OPM almost 5 years, 31 years in government, 26 of that at NASA. I started as a software engineer. I was an engineer for 15 years. That's a whole other story on how I went from engineering to this people job, because you can't find anything more different. You know, computers do not talk back to you. They work or they don't. All right, and then you know what to do to go in. People are quite different. When people say, "What does your day look like?" I said, "There is not a standard day. You just, because we know how people are, right?" And I actually did start my D&I career at NASA at one point, then moved over to OPM. Because what this office does, and this office is fairly new when you consider other offices in the government. We were stood up right when just after I came over, or just before I came over, and it was due to Executive Order 13583. How many of you are aware of that executive order? Most people are. That executive order came out in August 2011, and the title of it was to establish a coordinated government-wide initiative to promote diversity and inclusion in the federal workforce. And again, our office, it was placed in OPM. You still have the EEOC, and the EEOC does what they always did with regards to EEO, the complaints and compliance piece. We look at diversity and inclusion from this very broad sense. So I wanted to just mention that piece. When that executive order came out in 2011, it asked for a government-wide diversity and inclusion strategic plan, which we put together, our office did. But then it also asked that every agency submit their own diversity and inclusion strategic plans. So for all of the government, the feds that are in here, your agency would have submitted. We got back from 57 agencies, and that might sound small when you think about how big the federal government is, but we would get it from like a DOD, and that counts as one. Whereas within DOD, there's 20-something components by itself. Same thing for DHS or anybody else. So then we have stood up what we call a 60-plus agency partnership on D&I, which we meet quarterly with all the folks. It's actually open to any of the agency, practitioners on D&I, but we generally send it to your D&I person to attend these meetings. It's where we share best practices. We then brief on all the things we're working on at OPM on D&I, and it's also about hearing what all the agencies are doing. We've got really good feedback from folks in terms of it's really good sharing because you hear what we're working on and an opportunity to share what you're working on as well. When we developed that plan, had 3 goals: diversity, inclusion, sustainability. Very easy, because you think about when we develop strategic plans. How many of you can remember your agency's your goals out of your strategic plan? Anybody who can tell me they can quote it? All right, makes my point. Diversify your workforce, make sure they're included, and then how do you sustain your efforts? It's been about 4 or 5 years, time for a new strategic plan, right? So that hopefully should come out in the next couple weeks. Our new strategic plan goes pretty much the same, but we've sort of flipped it. Sustainability, inclusion, diversity. Sustainability, we're now calling that leaders lead, because it is about leadership, right? Accountability. The inclusion piece, we're calling it connected culture. That's really about how are you ensuring that your employees are connected to your culture, feel that you're part of it, right? Because you want to have an include employees to feel included, and they also, this whole piece about engagement these days. And then the third piece about diversity, it's about data-driven diversity. Making sure that we provide you the data, or agencies the data, so that they can make decisions on what they need to do with regards to working on diversity issues. Don't want to go on much more than that, just to give you a quick overview, because I think we have a fabulous panel here that will talk about what they are doing. And so with that, let me go ahead and do just a quick introduction, name and title, and then I'll have them do more about themselves. So to my immediate right, we have Allison Wise, who's the Diversity and Inclusion Program Director at NARA. And she'll tell you what NARA stands for in a minute. Karen Hanna, who's Chief of Strategic Recruitment and Outreach at the Department of Defense. And Junish Aurora, who's the Senior Program Manager, Diversity and Inclusion in the Office of the Chief Human Capital Officer at DHS. So welcome. I am just going to, if you can just take, say, 5 minutes to just talk about, a little bit about who you are and what your agency is doing with regards to D&I, and then I'll pose more specific questions. So why don't I start with Allison?
All right. Good morning, everybody. This is Allison Wise. I'm the Program Director for National Archives and Records Administration, known as NARA. I've actually been the Program Director since 2010. But I've been there for 15 years, and prior to that, 12 years in the Department of Navy. So started off, my background is actually business and finance, like Sharon, I would say. I decided I didn't want to be a licensed stockbroker and decided to get into the people business. I was interning in an EEO office and kind of got bitten by the diversity bug and knew that that was the direction I was passionate about and was more aligned with where I wanted to be. So started out there and transitioned in over to National Archives and Records Administration, where I've been building a diversity and inclusion program there as the director since 2010. And when I came into that position, as Sharon mentioned, we were getting the executive order. So I had 3 major goals that I was working on immediately as becoming the director. One was developing our first ever strategic plan for diversity and inclusion at NARA, which I'm proud to say is recognized as a best practice, and if you Google it, we're one of the top agencies that come up, and right up there with VA. So pretty proud about that was our first plan for diversity and inclusion, but I knew it was going to take more to really implement what was in that plan, and so I set out to really talk about what was it going to take to bring that to fruition, and I focused on building relationships with the executive leadership and understanding that D&I needed to be embedded in the entire employment process, that this was not a set-aside, but this was actually a strategic part of how you do business. So that has been one of my goals. The second one is really about developing an education program for diversity and inclusion for all employees, managers, and supervisors. And when I say education, it's not just about training. I've been building an education program that's built around awareness, attitudes and behaviors, addressing knowledge and skill, and also policy and practice. So it's more of a 4-pronged approach that I'm taking to diversity and inclusion and really helping employees and managers lead that at the National Archives. For the past 2 years, there has been a huge focus on inclusion. And so we piloted what is the new IQ, the inclusion quotient, at the National Archives, and had significant increase in our EBS scores. We're really proud about, and is now being rolled out all across the agency. And then now we are now partnering with the employee engagement for sustainability of that. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what I'm focused on as the director right now. And as a set-aside, I'm really passionate about building competency and capacity within all federal D&I practitioners so that they can lead effectively in the 21st century. So I've been working, kind of collaterally in that effort also.
Thank you. Good morning. Again, I'm Karen Hanna. I am the Chief of the Recruitment Assistance Division within the Department of Defense. We support the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Civilian Personnel Policy. And we work hand in hand with our Diversity and Inclusion Office at the Pentagon to come up with strategic recruitment initiatives and outreach to touch all walks of life, individuals from all walks of life. So my responsibility in this office is I have 2 different branches. One does college outreach. It's the strategic recruitment and outreach branch. And then the other branch that I'm responsible for is our veterans recruitment and outreach branch. But we're one big happy family. We're all out there to do the same thing, is to reach out to individuals seeking employment, seeking promotions, anything that they want to know about employment with Department of Defense. And through those programs, we not only support our Department of Defense Strategic Diversity and Inclusion Strategic Plan that was developed to cover the years 2012 to 2017, we are responsible also to support 5 other executive orders, and those are to increase Hispanic employment, increase individuals with disabilities, increase employment of veterans, advertise the Pathways program to recruit college students, and also the participation of Asian and Pacific Islanders in the federal government. So those are the executive orders that we support. And I have little notes because I didn't want to leave out any of the programs that my team is responsible for, because I have an awesome team that is responsible for organizing Department of Defense Hiring Heroes career fairs around the country. And that not only supports, we have 2 target markets, the employers, which are Department of Defense, other federal agencies, and private sector, because we know everyone wants to hire some great talent. And we know that the military is the most diverse agency organization in the world. So there's some great talent coming out of the military. So we have the target market of trying to get the job seekers that are either transitioning out, wounded warriors, military spouses, and veterans to come to our events. Another program that we have is the Student Training and Academic Recruitment Program. That's called the STAR program. And we have 4 universities where we have 4 students who are on-campus ambassadors throughout the year. There are DoD recruiters. They work 20 hours a week for us. They go into the classrooms, whether it's engineering classrooms, diversity clubs, They partner with the professors to promote not only job opportunities within Department of Defense, but also our Department of Defense scholarships. We have our own Department of Defense Hispanic Hiring Expos that we've conducted. We have had a couple career fairs in Puerto Rico on different parts of the island to increase Hispanic recruitment or employment. And we also partner with the University of Texas at San Antonio to bring about 40 different recruiters recruiting at 40 different spaces, booth spaces at their events, their career fairs. So that's one thing that we do to increase Hispanic employment. We also advertise the National Security Education Program. That is a program where students receive scholarships, and as a result of the scholarship, they need to pay back time to the government, not just Department of Defense. But there is a very diverse group. They're given the scholarship to study abroad and to learn foreign languages. So they bring the foreign language skills and their experience and living in a different culture, different areas of the world. It's a great program, and you can bring them on non-competitively if you are a federal agency. So that's one great thing about that program. I also chair the monthly Recruiters Consortium group. It's a group of recruiters throughout DoD and hiring managers who get together once a month just to talk about diversity and inclusion, where we are going to conduct employment and recruitment and different outreach activities, and bring best practices. What's working for different agencies within DoD, what's not working, what we can do better, how we can use our resources together to do even more. We support the Workforce Recruitment Program, the WRP program, bringing individuals with disabilities to work in the summer or during their school year. And we also are responsible for the FEORP and the DVAD reports that we send to OPM. And we also provide monthly statistics to our recruiters so that we know where we are. These are the numbers right now. We need to do a little bit more in this area of recruitment and outreach to bring up the diversity numbers. And also our team, one last thing, is they have a toll-free number and 2 dedicated email addresses and live chat that they perform twice a week through the computer to answer any questions of job seekers who are interested in coming to work for Department of Defense.
Karen.
You're welcome.
Good morning, everyone. And first of all, I want to thank Debbie and Sharon and the ACT-IAC leadership for the invitation. I'm not familiar with ACT-IAC, so it was interesting to learn a little bit about your organization. And I thought it was really interesting that an IT organization is so interested in human capital issues and in particular interested in diversity and inclusion. We know that in Silicon Valley, the hub of IT, there's a dearth of diversity as many large corporate entities have published recently their diversity statistics. So just want to laud your efforts for being proactive in addressing this issue. Was also impressed that listed a number of resources. This is a growing, evolving field, and so to the extent that you're interested and you have the time, definitely look at those resources because diversity is new. There's a lot of academic and corporate research, and I think we all find it fascinating, and hopefully you'll find some of that literature fascinating as well to give you additional background. And the other sort of interesting connection was your white paper that you drafted. I saw my supervisor, Angie Bailey, actually commissioned that white paper when she was at OPM. She's now Human Capital Officer at DHS, so it was funny seeing her name in that report. And it's exciting that we have so many participants online and on the telephone. So again, my name is Juna Shore. I'm a Senior Program Manager and Acting Executive Director for Diversity, Inclusion, and Human Capital. And we also implemented our Diversity and Inclusion Strategic Plan pursuant to the Executive Order in 2011. And we kind of shifted from, we were formerly called Diversity, Veterans, and Recruitment Outreach. We shifted from that organization that focused mostly on recruitment and veterans employment because that was an area where we were struggling. We shifted from that to diversity and inclusion to kind of have a more comprehensive approach to diversity and inclusion management. So we've had a number of successes through partnerships with our components. We're not quite as big as DoD, but we are the third largest federal agency just behind DoD and VA. We have large operational components, Customs and Border Protection, Transportation Security Administration. Each consists of about 60,000 employees, and then we have Secret Service, Citizenship and Immigration Services, FEMA, FLETC, which is the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, as well as U.S. Coast Guard. So what we wanted to do was build that infrastructure among our components for a new organization. So part of what we wanted to do was establish a D&I working group to bring together diversity and inclusion managers from across the components. We also wanted to build our partnership with OPM and join that 60-plus partners group, and then additional federal department-wide initiatives. So look forward to talking a little bit more about the program.
Great. So thank you everyone for telling us all about your programs. You know, Sven, one of the first questions I thought about was, given that the executive order has been out almost 5 years now, to share your top 1 or 2 accomplishments, and that was pretty much covered in a couple of years. And I think it was more than 1 or 2 accomplishments. It got to the point I was like, oh, I need to be reporting this, and I'm glad somebody is, because I'd really like to take some of the things that you have shared. But is there anything, like Julius, maybe start with you, that you would like to add from what you're doing? And then I invite the others if there's anything else you have in regards to looking at the executive order to now. What would you say is your top 1 or 2? You've done a bunch of, a lot of things, really good things, but what would you say, like that top 1 or 2 that you thought really helped move your organization?
Yeah, I think probably some of our largest accomplishments have been in the area of coordinated recruitment or strategic recruitment, and then workforce analysis and data analysis, diversity scorecards, dashboards, and snapshots. So starting with coordinated recruitment, and Karen Hanna talked a little bit about this. So as a new federal entity, we started out with lots of different component recruiters, Secret Service recruiters who were recruiting just for Secret Service positions, TSA recruiters just recruiting for transportation security officers. And so we started a corporate recruitment council consisting of component recruiters from all across the department. And they drafted the first coordinated recruitment and outreach strategy. And part of that strategy was to link 3 groups of professionals, HR and EO professionals, together who oftentimes were working in silos. So we had obviously the recruiters, the HR recruiters. We had the EO professionals and the diversity and inclusion professionals. And then we had the workforce planners, those HR professionals that knew about not only the capacity gaps, but how many CBP officers do we need to hire this year, but also the competency gaps. What are the critical skills that those CBP agents and officers need to accomplish their mission? So our coordinated recruitment and outreach strategy really is to try to link those 3 groups of individuals together, because each of them had their own sort of pool of knowledge. Like the diversity and inclusion professionals, the EO professionals, sort of had a sense of where we were doing well in terms of the hiring of diverse racial and ethnic groups, where we're doing where we're struggling with regards to women or veterans or individuals with disabilities. But the recruiters might not necessarily have known that, or the workforce planners didn't necessarily know that. The recruiters obviously were the boots on the ground. They were doing the outreach, the recruitment. They were interfacing with applicants at job fairs. But do they know exactly how many positions they were recruiting for? Do they know exactly what skills those positions encumbered? And then to kind of get back to that corporate model, if a U.S. Secret Service recruiter found someone that might not have been the best fit for Secret Service, could he he or she have knowledge about other DHS components like immigration and customs enforcement, or CBP or TSA, to kind of direct that applicant to one of our sister components to kind of really maximize the efficiency of our recruiting operation. So we started out kind of with a model of one DHS, sort of shifted to unity of effort, but trying to have one name brand with regards to DHS recruiting. So I think that's definitely one of our areas of success. And then the other is just in terms of data. I mean, you obviously your backgrounds are in the world of big data, and we really wanted to get more towards making the business case for diversity and inclusion, and we wanted to kind of inform all of our decisions with whatever data we have. And fortunately, in diversity, there is a lot of demographic data. So, but looking at that demographic data, having the analytic capability to figure out some trends, and then also once you identify those trends, how do you kind of market and message that to senior leadership? So we kind of have a number of different diversity data products, including a diversity dashboard that kind of has very high level trends, that kind of focuses on the optics, and that we use to market diversity and inclusion to our senior leadership. Then we kind of have diversity scorecards that really kind of look at the data in detail, that are really for our D&I and EO professionals, and those that are really kind of doing the analysis. And then lastly, we kind of have diversity and inclusion snapshots, which are basically one-pagers that cover specific diversity and inclusion issues like diversity within the SES, Hispanic representation at DHS, representation of individuals with disabilities at DHS, or the diversity profile of our specific components. So I think those are two areas of focus.
I think that the executive order really gave NARA a platform to mature its D&I program. I think it had been struggling for a long time, so there are a few things we did in each of the goal areas. So for goal number one, in terms of workforce diversity, our focus was really on strengthening our student programs, really getting out there and doing some grassroots efforts, strengthening our relationships with colleges and universities and also third-party providers. So we developed and matured our student programs so that we could give managers and supervisors a way to embrace diversity. If they don't have the tools or the programs and things to tap into, we can't really hold them accountable. So we recognized that we needed to mature that piece so that they could participate in those programs to really leverage diversity and inclusion. So we needed to build that piece. In goal number two, which is workplace inclusion, we did two things. We piloted and focused on inclusion through the new IQ, where we've had significant results from that, and are now working on sustainability of that effort. And then the second one, which surprisingly really has taken off and is probably recognized in a lot of other federal agencies for a long time, but that's the affinity group program. And National Archives had never had affinity groups, and we knew how important it was to really start nurturing the employees that we did have. We didn't have a whole lot of hiring going on at the time, so goal number one was not our main focus. We did build student internships. They weren't permanent positions, but we knew we had we had a lot of control in terms of what we did with our existing employees. So we really focused on goal number two, and our affinity group program has been growing by leaps and bounds. It is really embraced by our senior leadership, which is so surprising to us because we had no idea that how valuable that really could be in really embedding D&I into our culture there at National Archives. So that was a huge win for us, and we're actually getting a lot of airtime in our all-hands meetings, getting our affinity group chairs to step up and speak about their programs, and so it's giving them opportunities as well in terms of them developing. And goal number three, to kind of keep this short, it was about sustainability. And our focus there was accountability. And so what we managed to do over the past 3 years was actually develop a mandatory critical element in the performance plans of every manager and supervisor that included diversity and inclusion, EEO, employee engagement, and career development. It was all about the care and feeding of the employees, and they are absolutely being held accountable for it. We are now helping to train managers and supervisors about their responsibilities and the requirements to that critical element, and that was big. I think it was huge in terms of we have a lot of things that we think they should be doing, but they weren't taking advantage of it and they weren't being held accountable. Now that managers and supervisors know that that's a part of their performance plan and is attached to their money, they now are perking up. They're starting to listen. They're starting to knock on our doors and really, really start to lean in. And we knew that was really important about, in terms of sustaining a program, was having that accountability piece. So we've now had that in place since 2012. It started out with just EEO, D&I critical element, and just recently, this past fiscal year, it has evolved into building workplace culture and morale. So we began to take a holistic approach to it. We look at this as building the bridge as we walk on it, and our archivist will say we will quickly make adjustments as we need to. We recognize that it shouldn't just be D&I and EEO related, that there was benefits in involving employee engagement and career development in that, because that has a big role in the life of the employee. So we took more of a holistic approach to the critical element. And the last thing was D&I now partnering with the employee engagement program. And that is huge, because under the umbrella of employee engagement, we feel like you can't have engagement until you have inclusion. And they have absolutely bought into that. We are part of now their sustainability program. So now as we go out, I am now working with the employee engagement program manager to create an action plan for our employee engagement committees or work groups. And we are now baking in D&I into the employee engagement plans, so we are able to have sustainability in that way. So taking it goal by goal, those are the things that we have focused on at National Archives.
Okay, great. And you said so many pieces that segue into many other questions that I have. So let me ask the whole thing about the D&I, excuse me, ties to engagement, because you can't have an engaged workforce if people don't feel included, right? So what role has D&I had in improving your EVS scores? Because if you think that is really about measuring employees' perceptions of your workforce, that's where you really hear from your employees. It's not something we come up with, right? With regards to that EVS, it's employees filling that out. What role do you think D&I, in terms of the efforts that you have done, has on improving your EVS scores? Take a stab at that.
Sure, I'll give you an example of our organization, not DoD as a whole, but our organization. We looked at our FEVS scores and saw where we may need to strengthen those in different areas. And we wanted to do everything that we could to address the new IQ concept, and by creating a fair and open, cooperative, supportive, and empowering work environment for all of our employees in our organization. And so we wanted a place where employees felt welcome, included, important, valued. So one of the first things we did was we established an employment advisory group, and they conduct brown bags every month. They have presentations by diverse groups that come in and talk to our employees. They have included exercise into some of the exercise activities, into some of the meetings in the brown bags. So it gets everybody involved. It gets everybody talking and doing something fun, learning something new. We've held several Cultural Day awareness events, and what that is each directorate will take a different country or a different culture, and we'll wear the clothes, we'll cook the food, we'll talk about the differences, and then you go from room to room where everything is set up. And since a lot of our employees are either federal they either worked in a federal job overseas, or they were in the military and they lived overseas, or they were born and raised there and got jobs here, that they bring a lot of that to those cultural awareness days. We also identified behaviors that create inclusiveness in the work environment. So all of the supervisors and directors took a training class, D&I training class, and we also got training on speed of trust. And we took what we learned from that training and we had to go back to our own divisions and have exercises with our staff on how to be more inclusive and how to feel more involved and find out what behaviors. There were 13 behaviors of trust, and we had to discuss those and come up with which ones we felt were important to us and what we valued as our team. And then as we did that, it was a really great activity. It was also 4 cores of credibility, which includes integrity, intent, capabilities, and results in the workforce. And the team found that it was really refreshing that they were being included. They were being asked how they felt. They were asked what values they felt were important to them. And from doing that part of it, my team came up with 4 behaviors and clarify expectations of the whole organization and what they're expected to do, what supervisors are expected to do. Confront reality. If there's rumors going around the organization, let's talk about them, not go ask other people and find out what they're saying. Just confront reality to the supervisors. Listen first and respect others. So our team, my team is really one great big team, and they felt like they respected each other and they felt like they valued each other and they listened to each other. So they picked clarify expectations and confront reality. So what we did to meet that is we have a CR time. So 1 hour a week, they can come into my office and talk to me about any issues or things that they're concerned about. There is a little box where they can put in questions or concerns, and those will be discussed either if they want it privately or as a group. And as a result of all this, we had to present what we came up with to the whole organization. So it just didn't stop at the division level. The whole organization heard what we were doing with this project. So we felt like that upped our numbers, and our numbers are going up for the new IQ. And everyone's feeling included and valued and important. And everyone's unique and has different ideas about how things should work, and they don't feel afraid to talk about it and bring up new ideas.
Did you have anything to add?
I can talk a little bit about our implementation of the new IQ, because we really tried to make the link between inclusion and engagement as part of our messaging and marketing. That when it comes to the business case for diversity and inclusion, while diversity has a really a strong link with improvements in organizational performance and creativity and innovation, inclusion really drives employee engagement. And so what we did kind of in phase 1 of our new IQ is we had 2 pilots, one in our Office of the Chief Human Capital Officer and the second one in our Office of General Counsel. And we made the training mandatory for OCHIO, which we were able to do since our Human Capital Director was very supportive. For OGC, it was strongly recommended, so we didn't quite get the same participation rate. But it was a 2-hour training, and it focused on a number of topics. One was really kind of coming up with, really focusing on the business case for diversity and inclusion, making sure everyone understood that. The next was really kind of coming up with a common lexicon. People talk about diversity, people talk about inclusion, people talk about engagement, but what do those terms really mean? So we had exercises where we kind of asked group participants to share with the class what were sort of the key words that came to mind when they thought of those 3 terms of art. And then we also talked a lot about that link between inclusion and engagement, and we kind of had a real focus on some of the academic and corporate research. We talked about cognitive diversity and the difference between cognitive diversity and identity diversity. And then lastly, we focused on what are inclusive behaviors. We have lots of examples of inclusive behaviors and how you make them habits, how do you make those habits stick. And then in addition to the 2-hour training, because we realized only so much can be accomplished in 2 hours, we had a 90-day follow-up period of habit formation, which included both individuals committing to those inclusive behaviors. So what inclusive behaviors were you going to try to improve? And then also a peer recognition program where when you saw those inclusive behaviors, you demonstrated in the workplace, you recognized that person, you acknowledged that person. And so we got the survey results from those 2 pilots. We revised the training materials. And then phase 2 has really been focused on kind of being more of a train-the-trainer. So what we did is we had our first ever DHS-wide UIQ train-the-trainer session to really kind of build a cadre of new IQ practitioners across the department. So we had about 30 individuals from all 9 of our operational components come. And we also specifically brought in not only HR and EO and diversity professionals, but also those from the learning and development community, because those individuals do training day to day. We might be subject matter experts, but they're the experts at how do you make training impactful, how do you deliver the training, optimize, retention, and kind of make the goals of the training, the objectives of the training stick. So we had all those 3 communities attend. It was a 2-hour training, sort of modeled on OPM's Game Changers, which was a week-long training followed by 6 weeks of online training. But for our workforce, 2 days of training was asking a lot of them. So we really try to focus on building inclusion and engagement. And so when we share with leadership, some of our data will show, we'll look at some of the sub-indices of the FEBS. So there's the inclusion index, and we'll kind of show how that trends, the support for diversity index, and then the engagement index to show that, the components that are, stronger in one typically are strong in all 3. So we see that.
So just a quick question from all of you in regards to, we know that there's the engagement council and work's been going on around that. But I think we hear a lot from our D&I folks that here's the engagement work going along here, and sometimes it's not connected to D&I. I was very happy to hear that you say you're partnering with your engagement folks, but how
it didn't start out that way.
Didn't start
Sure.
out that way. What about some
I
of
can
you? How
admit.
are doing those in the D&I field? And are you hearing that you're not close related? Because here, the 3 of you, I would say, great, you guys are partnering and you're doing stuff, but it could be because we're on the D&I side, we're looking at it from, this is about engagement, and we see that way, but that is not what I'm hearing a lot. I hear there's parallel tracks going on. Any thoughts?
I would say that that is exactly where NARA was, I would say, 2.5 years ago, that it was more of a siloed approach, that it was not, we weren't leveraging, we weren't collaborating, we weren't modeling that behavior that we were espousing. And it was something that I wasn't willing to battle, I wasn't willing to fight right away, because in talking to Bruce Stewart, actually he was, he said what you need to do is really create value first. Oftentimes that's what D&I practitioners are struggling and battling, trying to get people to accept D&I as a part of engagement and all of those things, and they're not busy doing the work of D&I because they're busy, sort of trying to always make the case and everything. So I did what he said. I really focused on really building value with the employees so that I, as the program manager and program director, was not the only one talking about the value that this brought to their organization. And when I began to do that is when I saw the viral effect happen. And I shifted my focus to a pilot program where we piloted the inclusion quotient in the Office of Human Capital, strategy and communications, that was real strategic, and also in one of our mission critical organizations, which is one of our federal record centers, which is the major mission of our agency. And so by doing that and really pouring my time and resources into those employees and the leadership within those organizations, I began to see where we need to be spending our time. And that is not fighting with leadership to get them to recognize that D&I holds value, but is with our people. And we should be working in the trenches because it will make our job so much easier. And oftentimes, as the director, they say, oh, well, you need to be working with leadership. I get that. Yeah, I get that. And I have been. But if we don't have anything to hang our hat on, then it is really just spinning our wheels. So I really thank OPM for really stepping up to give us the tools we needed as practitioners to give us something that was so separate and apart from EEO that was a major tool for really moving our program to the next level. And I took that and ran with it. I ran with it for the last 2 years, pouring into those employees who wanted to be part of this, and that's where I spent my time. And it got to the point where they were still resisting and seeing that this wasn't a driver for employee engagement. Employee engagement was creating their committees, and they were telling me I couldn't have game changers and it was too confusing. I said, okay, that's fine, okay. So it got down to strategy. And I knew employee engagement was going out to one of our record centers down in Atlanta, and I said, I had a relationship with the director down there. I said, I'd love to come down and train your staff on the new IQ. And I'd like to come down when employee engagement is coming down. And I ran, ironically, traveling the day before then, delivering the new IQ training. And when the program manager came the next day to work with that engagement team, they were on fire. And they got 5 new employees who were disengaged to really actually want to be part of something bigger than themselves. She began to see the value. She works directly for the deputy archivist, went back, and I am telling you, I have a whole schedule for fiscal year 17 about how can we embed this in every federal record center now. And so it was not me, it was the Federal Record Center director who wrote our archivist to talk about the results. And as a result, OPM recognized us as increasing our employee engagement indice for 4%, and then along with that, the new IQ went up by 4% as well. So we're beginning to really see the changes, but not just in the EVS, but anecdotally. So we're making sure that we're capturing all of the things that employees are saying, and we're doing that through video, and we're letting them speak about it. And so we're showing those videos of their peers each time we go to a new organization. So it's all about strategy. It's about building how you can best spend your time. So we've partnered with our communications people to say, how do we best package this in moving this out so that I'm not standing up here in front of a monitor speaking about the new IQ. It's all about seeing their peers and their peers getting excited about this. So we've leveraged that strategy, and employee engagement had no choice but to hitch their wagon to us. So that's how it evolved. It really didn't start out, where we saw the value in it and we just said, oh yeah, we're gonna hold hands and sing Kumbaya. It was really a 2-year struggle to build value on the program.
Yeah, I think
Go ahead.
the best thing to do with that, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the best thing to do with any of these changes, the business is not necessarily going to be resistant because they don't want to be part of an inclusive environment. They just need to know, how is this going to make my life easier or better?
Right, totally agree, because you will not find anyone that says they are not committed and that they're not inclusive. They don't want a diverse workforce. Nobody will say that. But what we find a lot of times is they just need what's in it for me, and then also need some tools. Because a lot of people says, I'd love to do this, I just don't know what to do. And sometimes it's as simple as putting a checklist. Sometimes hearing your stories, and that's a key part of it. When you talk about it, it's changing the story. Because when we go back, when we talk about diversity and data-driven diversity, we are always about looking for numbers. And we'll hear all these stories, but if there's a lot of grumblings and a lot of story, but the data isn't backing it up, where's the disconnect? Whole groups of employees that are saying, this is not working for me, I'm disengaged, I'm not motivated, I can't get it, whatever we hear, but the data shows groups are moving, and we say, what's going on? And so when you start hearing the stories change, then you're really, excuse me, knowing that.
I would agree, Sharon, and I would just add to that and say that sometimes the numbers take a while to catch up. So one of the best things that my mentor told me when I'm really looking at measuring my efforts is to look at it in 3 prongs, and that's quantitative, qualitative, and anecdotal. So every time I do an effort, I am not just looking at my EBS scores. I am not just simply looking at my exit surveys. I am really getting out there and listening to what those employees are saying, and I'm connecting to the communication staff and saying, can you write an article on this in our declarations, in our newsletter? And we're getting the stories out there because the stories sell. When they get an opportunity to really tell their story and how this has worked for them as an executive, it's like free PR for a diversity practitioner. So I would definitely just say that when we need to be looking at making data-driven decisions in our new strategic plan, we need to be looking at it in 3 different ways and not just looking at the numbers in our diversity and how we're doing there. But what are they saying in the trenches? And the only way to do that is build relationships with those people who will tell you the truth. And then you go off of that as well. So, I say they all really matter in our work.
Yeah, I would just like to add that I think you all, it's a really good point in terms of adding, showing how you can add value and offering tools. And I think offering a variety of tools has definitely been part of our strategy, because only certain offices can invest in training, pull their staff offline for 2 hours and then commit to a 90-day habit formation period. So what we've tried to do is offer a variety of products. So some of the other products that we've offered inclusive questions, job aid. So for hiring managers, when you go to an interview, what are some of the questions you can ask? What are some of the behavioral questions you can ask that go to, is this applicant committed to diversity and inclusion? So you're bringing on board people who are already committed to the United Idols. We've also developed a job aid focusing on what are inclusive behaviors in the workplace modeled off OPM's small acts of inclusion. Again, to kind of give very concrete examples of what are some of these inclusive behaviors and how do they link to engagement.
As we talked about, one of the words I haven't heard us talking here is unconscious bias. So OPM, our office hosted a D&I summit back in April, and as part of that, the director of OPM came and she talked about that unconscious bias is one of the biggest challenges in our workplace and on our workforce. So how do you train staff and supervisors in a way that helps them understand unconscious bias and how this impacts acceptance and ability? We're doing really great, things around personal inclusion and engagement, but what else can we do in regards to training our staff and our supervisors? And let me just even give you maybe a little bit more. So we talk about data-driven diversity and applicant flow data. And when we look at our applicant flow data, it's really what you look at the hiring process. Who's applying, who's being qualified, who's referred, and who's being selected. And for the longest time, you've heard folks say we need to do outreach and recruitment efforts. But as agencies start looking at that data, they're seeing, wait a second, we do have the applicant pool. It is when we get to the selection piece. Of course, you can have issues along the way because that helps you refocus where your efforts are. Because if you're getting 3 times, your populations within the applicant pool, you might want to say, okay, maybe that's not where I need to put my resources. If you're seeing you get large amounts within your applicant pool, but then it goes to you're not being qualified, is it that you need to relook at how you write your vacancy announcements, right? And as you go on, when we get to the selection piece, dramatic drops a lot of times. That could be due to some unconsciousness, things that are going on with your selection process. And I'm not saying your selecting officials, I'm saying the process. What do you think we can do around unconscious bias?
One of the things my staff did was from our career fairs for hiring heroes, the veterans who are severely injured, whether they're missing limbs, they can't hear, they can't see any longer. We listened to our employers that come to our events, and they were a little bit not understanding of PTSD and traumatic brain injury. So we wanted to have a training session for them to teach them that not to be afraid of it, not to look at that and say, well, I have 2 people who are injured, but this one has PTSD, I might go with the other, but to squelch some of those myths or whatever that are out there. And what we did was, the day before our career fair at the old Walter Reed in DC, we had some of the medical professionals spend a whole day with our employers talking about PTSD and traumatic brain injury and how to hire someone, work with someone who may have that. And also we had some wounded warriors, we had 3 of them speak in between each of the medical professionals, so they could talk about, I'm going through recovery right now, but I can still do this. I can't do what I did before, but this is how I could make a great employee for you in a different way. So the way that they were, maybe their diversity that they had before was completely different when they got injured. So we tried to provide training on that. We tell our employees in our organization to go to take training on HR University. Training there as well. We also train our college students, the ones that are in a STAR program. We give them a week of orientation to teach them about diversity and inclusion, and especially when they're going into the clubs on the campus. So they get training in that as well. We even give them tours of the CAP office. If you're not familiar with the CAP office, they provide assistive technology to individuals with disabilities. So we take them over there. They may not have a disability, but we want them to know that when they're future leaders, if someone on their staff may need something, they'll understand how it works, where they can get equipment and things like that. So those are some of the things that we're doing. But we always ask our employers, whether it's private sector or other federal agencies and DoD, how can we help them better when we're organizing these events specifically for them to find great talent? If there's something that we can do as a team to better help them. One other thing that we found out is that during our career fairs, some individuals with PTSD, it's a little overwhelming because it's large, there's a lot of people, it's noisy. So what we've done to help them is the night before a career fair, we have sort of like a little mini career fair. It's called Networking with Industry, and we invite employers just to come and mingle. So it's a meet and greet, very casual, so that it's not noisy, it's not overwhelming, and we only bring just a small handful of employers. And they can interview them that night. They don't have to interview them the next day in a large environment with a lot of people.
And this is Russ Merton from DCMA. To piggyback on what Ms. Hannah was saying about those networking events, I was able to make one selection at the last event we had in San Antonio with someone who has some PTSD, and we just sat at the table, had a glass of water, talked for 40 minutes, and within 2 weeks he had an offer, and he's with us now in San Antonio.
Awesome,
So
Russ.
those events work.
Thank you, Russ. I'd like to add one other thing is, even at the career fairs, and you were talking about numbers, everybody's always wanting numbers, and sometimes, even though you can count the numbers, all the numbers don't always count. Because one of our events, we had an individual who was blind, and his wife made him come. He was still going through recovery at the hospital there down in San Antonio, at Fort Sam Houston. And he didn't want to come to the event. He said, no one will want to hire me. And he came in and he walked maybe 3 or 4 feet behind his wife and I told him, I said, look, I know some great employers. I'm going to personally take you to their table to meet the recruiter. And so after he was, like I said, he was about 3 or 4 feet behind us walking, kind of slouched over. After he went to a couple employers, he was walking straight and he was walking beside us. And then by the time I got to the last employer, I said, I want to take you to the Army Corps of Engineers. The recruiter there is a wounded warrior. He was here at this facility. Now he's working full-time for that company. I said, they're about 10 booth spaces down on the left. He took off with his walking stick and he was gone, and he found the booth on his own, and he was standing up really proud and tall and said, I never believed anyone would want to hire me. And his wife was crying and I was crying. And, it just shows you that, you know, even though they may not have hired him that day because they didn't, because he had some more surgeries and he felt like he wasn't ready yet, he has all these contacts that he has in his back pocket to contact when he is ready. So you can just seeing something happen in an hour is, you know, you're making a difference going out and in these type of environments.
Yeah, we've addressed unconscious bias both on the training side and then also on the recruitment and outreach side. On the training side, with our new IQ, we touch upon different aspects of unconscious bias. So we talk a little bit about, you know, at any given point, you might be bombarded with 11 million pieces of data, but you're only filtering about 50. You're only processing about 50 of those, and that just having greater awareness of all the messages and all the stereotypes that you're constantly being bombarded with. Then we also talk a little bit about the value of having diverse teams and how heterogeneous teams can outperform homogeneous teams when the problems are complex, because each person on the heterogeneous team is looking at different pieces of information, has access to different kinds of tools. And then we talk about when it comes to workplace cultures, we have different kinds of cultures, and one of the most common ones is that of assimilation, where there's sort of conformity to certain cultural norms, and that produces groupthink and sort of doesn't necessarily lead to greater innovation and creativity. And then kind of on the recruitment side, we focus mostly on the biases that are sometimes experienced by individuals with disabilities. We know there is an executive order on the employment of individuals with disabilities, that they're often an underemployed, underutilized group. They have very relatively high unemployment rates. They have lower promotion rates, but they are an incredibly valuable pool of talent. We know that they also, once they get the employment, they tend to stay longer. They tend to be much more engaged in the work. And so what we've done is sort of address some of that. We've set annual hiring goals for the department, both for individuals with disabilities, veterans with disabilities, and veterans with disabilities, because while we can't have quotas for gender or ethnicity or race, we can have hiring goals for those groups of veterans and individuals with disabilities. So we have that. Then we've developed an individuals with disabilities toolkit to kind of help managers get a better understanding of how do you specifically recruit individuals with disabilities, what are the special hiring authorities, what are the other resources that are available. So
Sharon, I would just add one thing to that we've done really valuable at NARA, and that is that I have a listing from our resource allocation board that determines who's going to get vacancies, where all of our vacancies are coming, and I get a listing of that. I know exactly where our hires are taking place, and I've actually gone out and talked to the managers, the hiring managers, the organizations who are doing the hiring, and let them know that we offer a briefing on hiring and interviewing through a diverse and inclusive lens. So we've created a briefing, and we get real intentional. So I don't just do it as a catch-all for everybody. I wait until right before they're about to get those certs and the certificate of eligibles, and they're about to form their structured interview guides. They're about to hire those individuals, so I know exactly when to go in and talk to them about checking their unconscious bias, about creating their diverse selection panels, all of that. But a lot of that is what Juna said, is really getting educated yourself about unconscious bias and how powerful that role that plays in the decision making. And so understanding that and being able to convey that to the managers and supervisors in an intentional manner and not just a catch-all. We're not going to just train everybody and then they don't hire for another 3 years. We actually wait and we do individual briefings with those managers and supervisors as they're going through and selecting. It is a little bit more challenging in terms of resources that we have for it, but it's really just a 45-minute briefing, and it keeps them in the forefront of their mind when they're right in the midst of it.
So looking at the time, too, and I want to give a few minutes for quick answer, but if you could just give your answer to, say, 60 seconds on this one. We talked about accountability, and we talked about the critical element in performance plans, and I saw a lot of it shaking. So the question is about how you hold supervisors and managers accountable for meeting E&I values, and the critical element in performance plan is a good start. But who reviews those, and who's really looking at what that is saying?
I would say with our new process, we didn't have that audit piece baked into it because, sometimes it's very subjective when you look at, who's accomplished what. So this is what we did. We really got intentional about the different levels of ratings. So when we said you're at a fully successful level, what does that mean for diversity and inclusion and engagement? That means that you are participatory, that you encourage, that you are doing the job that you were hired to do, basically. So we equate that and measure that as just encouraging and participating. At the next level, which is the highly successful level, we are looking at, are you being innovative, creative, and proactive? So they have to be able to show at the highly successful level that maybe they haven't had results yet, but they are taking extra measures to either hire and recruit or be proactive in their EEO efforts. And then at the outstanding level, we have defined that as you've implemented with positive results. And so we want to see that in your write-up for that critical element, we're seeing that. And now we are undergoing an audit, and all managers and supervisors know that they're going to get their critical element looked at. So we were recognizing that people were rating themselves as outstanding, but we were having morale issues. We were having high turnover. We were having complaints go up. So how is that you are outstanding? And so we were looking at different ways to do that. So now we are actually, after we've defined it, and we have gone out and we have done all the training on it to hold them accountable. Now we have tools in place for them to actually get to that level because they're saying, you're holding us accountable, what do you have for us? So now D&I has created a whole toolkit for that so that we can now hold them accountable.
Great. I really, really like that. My previous agency, we had done that. And because what we said is anybody that got rated the outstanding, you got to be rated across the board in all your elements. And they were great. And we're talking scientists and engineers, really technically great at what they do. But you have to be great at everything to be an outstanding. And it was, where was that audit piece? Because you will be amazed at what the narrative would say. So that really, I think, was a game changer in terms of that audit piece that they didn't really understand, and the tools to understand what you were looking for. I will then just wrap up with one last question. The impending change in the administration. How are you ensuring that the D&I is sustained regardless of who comes in within the next administration?
Well, certainly we are looking to issue our new DHS Diversity and Inclusion Strategic Plan. So the initial strategic plan was FY 12 to 15, based on the executive order and OPM's government-wide strategic plan. And so as OPM issues their new diversity and inclusion strategic plan, we'll issue our plan FY 16 to 19. So definitely having that strategic plan as well as an accompanying operational plan will ensure that there's some continuity of the operations in this D&I space. And then I think just participating in some of the government-wide efforts for diversity and inclusion. So there are two recent efforts that have really gotten some traction. So one is looking at the diversity of the national security workforce, and the other one is looking at diversity within the STEM workforce and how do you reduce bias in that scientific and technical community. So partnering with other federal agencies on these really large initiatives that go to some of the core missions of the federal government, some of the core services of the federal government.
The DoD's strategic workforce, diversity and inclusion workforce plan is going to go through 2017. So we're not going to just stop it just because of administration change. And plus the executive orders that we support, even if they went away, we would still support the intent of those executive orders, because it would be silly not to increase employment in all the different diverse areas. We participate in a defense, diversity, and inclusion work group. That's not going to go away. We will continue to do that. We also support the national security work group and cyber and acquisition. And all of these are not only looking to fill positions or improve areas in those, like in cyber, but to reach out to diverse populations. So I don't see any of our programs being diminished, going away, changing. A lot of them we even did before they became executive orders. So the initiatives that we have, we will keep on moving on with them.
I would say National Archives is unique in that our agency head does not change necessarily with the administration. So in the past, I've been there since, for 2-3 administrations, and we really have not seen, we don't see an impact. Oftentimes when the president is, we have a new president, is they don't necessarily change our agency head. So all our work has been really embedding D&I into the practices for the past 4 years, and we see that being sustained through our accountability of our critical element. They're not going to take that out anymore, any more than they would eliminate other critical elements. So we know that by working and focusing on those things that are really embedded, that we know that we'll be able to really sustain